One U.S. aircraft carrier carries more firepower than entire countries. And somehow, the deadliest weapons on board are the ones nobody ever sees. Hidden under the flight deck are laser cannons, AI defense systems, electromagnetic launch machines, and anti-drone weapons straight out of science fiction. And the craziest part? Most people think these ships are just floating airports for fighter jets. They're not. They're $13 billion floating fortresses built to survive attacks from every direction imaginable, even threats that move faster than sound itself. A U.S. aircraft carrier is basically the most valuable target in the ocean. Think about it. One ship carrying over 4,000 crew members, more than 65 aircraft, and enough military power to change an entire war zone. And there are 11 nuclear supercarriers sailing around the world right now, operating for over 20 years without refueling. That kind of power attracts everything. Hypersonic missiles, submarines hiding underwater, anti-ship missiles, even massive drone swarms. Which is why carriers don't rely on just one defense system. They survive through layers, multiple walls of protection stacked together. And honestly, the visible weapons are only the beginning. If you ever look at an aircraft carrier closely, you'll notice these strange white machines sitting near the edges of the ship. They look almost harmless, like giant versions of R2-D2 from Star Wars. But then, you realize those things can fire 4,500 rounds per minute. That's 75 bullets every second. The Phalanx CIWS doesn't wait for humans to react either. It tracks incoming missiles with radar, calculates their path instantly, and opens fire automatically before anyone even has time to think. And this is where it gets insane. The system is designed for the absolute worst-case scenario, when an enemy missile is already seconds away from smashing into the carrier. The 6-barrel 20mm Gatling gun creates what sailors call a wall of lead, flooding the sky with tungsten penetrator rounds powerful enough to rip missiles apart mid-air. By the time humans react, the Phalanx is already fired. But the Navy realized something terrifying years ago. Waiting until a missile gets that close is way too risky. So right beside the Phalanx sits another system called RAM, Rolling Airframe Missiles. These launchers carry 21 fast-moving interceptors designed specifically to hunt incoming anti-ship missiles before they ever reach gun range. And honestly, these things are smart. At first, RAM locks onto radio frequency signals coming from enemy missiles. Then suddenly, it switches to infrared tracking and follows the target's heat signature instead. That dual-mode guidance makes it extremely difficult to jam or fool. And with interception ranges reaching nearly 5 nautical miles, RAM pushes the carrier's defensive bubble much farther away from the ship itself. Now hold on, because there's another layer most people never hear about. The Evolved Sea Sparrow Missile, or ESSM. This system fills the dangerous gap between long-range fleet defenses and close-range weapons like Phalanx. And these missiles move fast, over twice the speed of sound. What makes ESSM dangerous is its agility. It can maneuver hard enough to chase highly evasive targets, even missiles trying to dodge interception at the last second. Using semi-active radar homing, it tracks threats with extreme precision while working alongside destroyers and escort ships around the carrier. Every layer exists for one reason, to make sure nothing gets through. But here's the twist. Some of the carrier's strongest weapons don't fire bullets or missiles at all. The AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare system fights enemies invisibly. It listens constantly, scanning radar frequencies across the battlefield, searching for anything targeting the ship. And once it detects a threat, the deception begins. The system can jam enemy radar signals, intercept communications, and even create fake targets using clouds of metallic chaff that confuse incoming missiles. Modern upgrades reportedly use machine learning software capable of identifying new threats almost instantly, which means the carrier is learning while it fights. And honestly, that changes everything. Some battles are won without firing a single shot. Most people focus on missiles from the sky, but underwater, the danger gets even worse. Enemy submarines can launch torpedoes silently from miles away, and carriers are far too valuable to leave exposed. That's why the Navy deploys systems like the AN/SLQ-25 Nixie decoy behind the ship. The Nixie acts like bait. It's dragged through the water on a cable, copying the carrier's acoustic signature so incoming torpedoes lock onto the fake target instead of the actual ship. And this next part sounds unreal. Newer systems can actually launch anti-torpedo torpedoes designed to intercept enemy weapons underwater before impact. So even beneath the ocean surface, the carrier is still fighting back. And then, the Navy changed something that had existed for over 60 years. The new Ford-class carriers stopped using steam catapults completely. Instead, they introduced EMALS, the electromagnetic aircraft launch system. No steam, no violent mechanical launch, just massive linear motors using magnetic acceleration to throw aircraft from 0 to 170 miles per hour in under 300 feet. It honestly feels more like science fiction than military engineering. But here's why it matters. EMALS launches aircraft much smoother, reducing stress on expensive fighter jets, drones, and even future aircraft the Navy hasn't fully revealed yet. And aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, the system has already completed thousands of launches successfully. This wasn't just an upgrade, it changed naval warfare forever. But launching aircraft was only half the problem. Landing them was even crazier. Ford-class carriers now use advanced arresting gear, replacing old hydraulic systems with electromagnetic technology that catches aircraft far more smoothly during high-speed recoveries. And beneath the deck, advanced weapon elevators use electromagnetic motors to move bombs and missiles faster than ever before. That means more aircraft armed quicker and more combat missions launched every single day. The insane electrical power generated by Ford-class carriers makes all of this possible. Now hold on, because this next weapon sounds completely unreal. The US Navy is already deploying combat lasers. Back in 2014, the USS Ponce tested a laser weapon capable of burning drones and small boats straight out of the sky. But today's systems are far more dangerous. The HELIOS laser system now produces over 60 kilowatts of power and connects directly into the Navy's Aegis combat network. And this is where things get terrifying. These lasers use adaptive optics to stay locked onto moving targets, even through atmospheric distortion. Drones, missiles, fast attack boats, they can all be targeted at the speed of light. Future versions are expected to reach 150, 300, even 1 megawatt of power. Meanwhile, interceptor missiles used in the Red Sea cost millions of dollars each. A laser shot, roughly $1. No reloads, no ammunition limits. This is the moment science fiction became military reality, but the battlefield changed again. Suddenly, carriers weren't just facing billion-dollar missiles. They were facing swarms of cheap drones launched from almost anywhere. And firing expensive interceptor missiles at tiny drones became economically impossible. So the Navy created something new. The Coyote interceptor drone was built specifically to hunt enemy drones mid-air using autonomous tracking systems. Then came Roadrunner, a reusable jet-powered interceptor that can launch, destroy targets, and if it doesn't engage, return vertically back to the ship for reuse. That changes everything, because modern warfare isn't just about firepower anymore, it's about who can afford to keep fighting longer. And then, almost nobody noticed when the Navy quietly deployed one of its most mysterious weapons ever, the AIM-174B, a giant long-range missile adapted from the SM-6 and launched directly from F/A-18 Super Hornets. Its real range is still heavily secretive, but estimates suggest it can strike targets over 200 miles away. Think about what that means. Enemy bombers and reconnaissance aircraft could now be destroyed long before they ever get close to a carrier strike group. And honestly, that changes the entire battlefield. The Navy barely talks about this missile publicly, but the message is clear. The carrier's defensive perimeter just became terrifyingly larger. But here's the thing, most people completely miss. Aircraft carriers never sail alone, ever. Around them is an entire floating fortress network made up of destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and support ships, all connected into one giant combat system. Destroyers equipped with the Aegis combat system track threats hundreds of miles away, while submarines quietly move ahead of the fleet, searching for enemy submarines beneath the ocean. Every ship protects the others through layered defense. And right at the center of all of it sits the carrier itself, acting as the command hub for one of the most powerful military formations on Earth. And honestly, the craziest part is that the Navy still isn't finished. Railguns capable of firing projectiles faster than Mach 7 are already being tested. No explosives, pure kinetic destruction. Then there are free electron lasers powerful enough to potentially destroy ballistic missiles in midair. Artificial intelligence is also taking over more battlefield decisions, processing threats faster than humans ever could. And future carriers may even carry onboard 3D printing systems capable of manufacturing replacement parts and weapon components while still at sea. Which means tomorrow's aircraft carriers may become nearly self-sustaining war machines. And that future is arriving much faster than people realize. When you step back and look at everything together, the missiles, lasers, electronic warfare systems, AI defenses, drone hunters, submarines, and electromagnetic technology, you start to understand what a US aircraft carrier really is. It's not just a ship. It's an entire floating combat ecosystem built through decades of military innovation. And behind every one of these systems are thousands of sailors operating under unimaginable pressure every single day. Because at the end of the day, carriers still represent one thing above all else: power. Global power. These aren't just ships. They're floating fortresses built for the wars of tomorrow.